Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Wake and Take. It's your boy Jason, and we've got some football to talk about today. Today, I'm going to be joined by a very special guest as we break down some of the trending topics from around their league, get some ideas around some of the news stories that broke yesterday, as well as asking him for his hot take heading into next season. It's going to be a fun one, so go ahead, pull out your coffee, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. All right, and today I am joined by John Laub, Gridiron School 91 on Twitter. You've been seeing him all over Player Profiler the last, month and a half, two months or so, writing some articles for these rookie prospects and some other stuff. Doing really, really great work. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great, and you notice when I started, I'm having my coffee. I cannot survive without coffee, so I'm with you all the way. And, I love this time of the year. It is prospect time, free agency time. There's a lot of news. The NFL is now 365 days a year, so I'm ready to talk. We might have a little week off in June, right?
Yeah.
But other than that, it is constant. So I'm ready to chat NFL today, my friend.
Yeah, man. I guess I've got to ask. How do you like your coffee? You black coffee guy? What do you do? What's your thing? What's your choice?
So you're going to flip out. I am straight black coffee. I have reached that grandpa stage in life. Don't give me milk. Don't give me sugar. I progressed from it was milk and sugar to just milk. Now I'm straight black coffee.
Yeah. I'll get there one day. I'm on almond milk right now. I've gone creamer to like cream and sugar to now I'm at almond milk. So we'll see. We'll see how that develops. As we watch Wake and Take, you audience, you guys know I have coffee with you guys. So we'll see how that develops. But we're not here to talk about coffee. We could, but we're here to talk football. And I want to, when I have guests, get their thoughts on trending topics, especially when, the audience gets tired of hearing my thoughts on a lot of these things. So I like to add some extra opinions. So why don't we go ahead and start with your thoughts from this weekend's one of the biggest events of the year, the NFL Combine. What'd you learn from it? What are your big takeaways?
So I use the Combine as a data point. I have about 4 or 5 data points throughout my prospect analysis. What I'm specifically looking for tends to be outliers. Players who either way exceeded what I thought or did not expect, or players that really did not perform well. So I'll give 2 examples. One would be Issac Guerendo, the running back from Louisville. He had played at Wisconsin. I saw him on some prospect list. I did not expect him to be that uber athletic, which tells me he will be drafted now. I do have questions about him running the football, but he will get an opportunity in the NFL, at least as a special teams player, if not nothing else. I did not expect that. The other one would be Audric Estime.
Okay.
I'm sorry. When you run a 4.71, and I still am, I do like the film, and I do think that he has a role for him in the NFL between the tackles. However, the 4.71 without a lot of pass catching ability, it really does limit what his ceiling can be in my perspective. Now, I'll be open-minded. If he goes out to his pro day and he runs a 4.58, maybe that opens up some opportunities. But really, the 7-1 score, I mean, that just really, he goes from what I thought was an early 3rd-round pick. He's probably around 5 now, right? There will be a team that wants that pile driver, short yardage. So that's what I'm using the Combine for, really just to find the extremes. Someone runs a 4.48 or a 4.51, that's not a huge difference in my book. But when you get to the extremes like those 2 players, I really have to readjust and think about it.
Okay, I think that's a really reasonable way to go into the Combine. I might have to start using that approach. a bit more going forward. I'm kind of new to this as well, so it's nice kind of learning other people's viewpoints on the combine. That's a very, very interesting take on how to really evaluate the prospects from it. Was there a player or even two that you're now leaving from this saying you have to draft in fantasy football next season?
So I can't believe I'm staying in the running back, but I'll say one player in the running back position. I've done the research, and anyone who knows the group of 5 prospects, and what I mean by that, players from conferences that are not the Pac-10 or the Pac-12, the Big 10, the Big 12, the SEC, ACC. So you have like the Sun Belt and the MAC. Their odds of being a successful NFL fantasy player are much, much less. So I when I do my rankings, I consider the competition level. But one guy made my top 15 at running back. And I was surprised because I loved the film, but I wondered what his athletic ability was. But it was Kimani Vidal out of Troy. His BMI, going off the top, his BMI, I believe, is over 32. And like historically, if you look at BMI, you're over 30. Like your chances for success are astronomical. Now, I love this film, but let's understand. Troy plays in the Sun Belt Conference. There might not have been a linebacker or a safety at the NFL level that he's going to compete against in his conference play. But I love the film. But then I saw his athletic ability. He has speed, he has agility, he has burst. In a dynasty league, right now, if he's available in the 4th round, I'm going to draft him on every dynasty league draft I have. He gets pushed up into the 3rd. But, man, I have him in my top 12 right now. He's the only G5 running back in the top 15. But he has showed me the athletic ability, and he warrants that. What I actually think I'm not really good necessarily at comparisons, but I do. They happen when you're watching tape. He's Devin Singletary with power. And Devin Singletary has been a useful fantasy player, not a star, but we've all played in these deep leagues with flex positions. Hey, I used Devin Singletary almost every week once he got the job in Houston. He was a starter. I had to have him in the lineup, right? And there were some weeks where he had over 20 points. So those are the types of players when you're in highly competitive leagues, you need to find those flex type players, the backups, if you have in the run. I really like him right now. Kimani Vidal. He's the type of player who rose up. Another one, Ricky Pearsall. I had some questions about Ricky Pearsall in Florida, transferred to Arizona. Wasn't exactly sure. I know there were some people who really liked the tape. I was lukewarm, put it that way. I was like, I don't know what his athletic ability is. He looks fast, but you know what? Maybe it's the curmudgeon in me, Jason. I've seen a lot of players that look fast on tape, and then you see their athletic, and you're like, ooh. So I've learned to temper my expectations. But when I saw what Ricky Pearsall did athletically, he has a role in the NFL. I think he's a lock, stock, 2nd-round pick right now. I just did with our teammates at Player Profiler. I did a mock draft, and I got Ricky Pearsall in the 3rd round. I'll take him there all day at that value. He's athletic. He was dominant his last year. He can play slot in the outside. I like him, so he moved up in my rankings.
I like both of those calls, especially Kimani Vidal. That's a guy that I'm honestly surprised not many people are talking about right now because he impressed at the Senior Bowl. He literally has the most rush yards out of any running back going to the NFL this year. Literally the best stats. He's Hank Aaron's grandson or nephew, whatever it is.
He's related.
Right. And then also, I had the pleasure of going to the Senior Bowl. I know I mentioned he stood out there, but I interviewed him. I stood within 2 feet of this guy. And so big. Like, he is ridiculously built out. You mentioned that BMI. It's so true, especially when you see it in person. I really do think he's going to be successful. Also, 4.46, that's what Marshawn Lloyd ran, and everyone is salivating over him. And he doesn't have the weight and frame that Kimani Vidal has. When I spoke to him, you know what he called himself? Maurice Jones-Drew and Ray Rice. And I love it.
I think there are fair comparisons to those two players. And I love the 40 time. I thought he was going to be like because he was at a G5. Yeah. I thought he was going to come in at like a 4.52, 4.53, which would have been good still, but not great. But man, look at the 3-cone drill in the shuttle. I forgot the numbers, but I was like, whoa, he's fast, he's explosive. So yeah, I really like him a lot.
Yeah, I'm going to be with you on him at wherever I can, especially that 4th round, 5th round even I've seen a couple times, and not even drafted in best ball. So everyone remember that name as we keep getting through this process, and don't be surprised when he gets drafted a bit higher, because we've seen these G5 running backs. James Robinson comes to mind, of Philip Lindsay, Kareem Hunt. You can keep going.
There's so many. In the last 6 or 7 years, I mean, I've been doing the analysis for 11 years now.
Yeah.
But there's so many guys who pop for 1 or 2 years, and we're in Dynasty. I'll take a running back for 1 or 2 years as my flex right now. If you give me dates, if you give me James Robinson next year, his rookie year that he was the Jaguars, Jason, I'll take it. Let me have that for a 4th or 5th round pick. I'm totally cool. Whatever happens after that, I'll deal with it at that point.
Awesome. Well, great thoughts on the combine. I think those are both great calls. Pearsall also had a really great Senior Bowl. So good, he didn't even finish it. He just left. He was like, I'm done. I've done enough. And so that's how you know. That's really how you know when you look at these just events in general. Great combine, especially the agility drills. So great calls on both of them. We'll move on to just some trending topics before we get into the actual news. And this is, if you've tuned in, everyone, this is just, I asked guests their opinion on some of the stuff going around. And right now we're in the heart of free agency. And so I've got 4 names for you that I want you to kind of briefly discuss. We don't have to go into detail, but maybe pick where you think they'll be playing next season. And we'll start with Saquon Barkley.
I really do believe that Saquon Barkley has a little bit left in the tank. He's not going to be the player he was before, 2019 or 18 when he came out. But you look at his numbers last year, and they're underrated, and especially when you consider his quarterback was Tommy DeVito for a very long time, and that Giants offensive line was not very good. So I'll say this. If I'm the Houston Texans,
yes,
I'm signing Saquon Barkley. He's a plug-and-play star on that offense. I have a franchise quarterback. I have my receivers, and we could argue if they need an upgrade. That's a decent argument, but they just signed Dalton Schultz. What a problem with Dalton Schultz, Tank Dell, and Saquon Barkley for linebackers and safeties in the NFL. You are literally looking at 3 monster players who can challenge the center of the gridiron. That would be phenomenal for C.J. Stroud. I think it's his best landing spot. And you imagine him playing with an efficient offense? Jason, he has not had an efficient offense in New York. I mean, he's going to get more opportunities if they stay healthy. Love him in Arizona.
Yeah.
In Houston.
Yeah. Houston, that's one that we've been talking about on Wake and Take for over a month now, I believe at this point. I thought of it and have just been running with it. It makes too much sense. I really think it's going to happen. He wants to be there as well. He literally came out and said that's his number 1 spot. I mean,
I didn't even hear that.
Yeah, last week he came out and said that is his ideal landing spot. He followed Tank Dell, Brevin Jordan, CJ Stroud, and Nico Collins on Instagram all in the same day. And a New York furniture store. So I think he's maybe shopping for the move. So anyway, with you totally there. And, you mentioned Tank Dell, Dalton Schultz, and Saquon Barkley potentially. But even if John Mechie becomes what we hope he can be, then you're talking about another player really just taking over the middle of the field with that team. That's something really, really special. We'll move on to the next trending player, and that's Baker Mayfield. Is he back in Tampa?
I'm very happy. Well, I do want him back in Tampa. There's such a dichotomy between fantasy and reality.
Okay.
Baker Mayfield, if you are the Tampa Bay Bucks and you want to win the division again and make the playoffs and have a winning record, you've got to go with Baker Mayfield. They're a veteran team. They're getting a little up there in age. I don't think with the roster as it is constructed right now, they're not in this for the long run. You're looking at a shorter window. Baker Mayfield is going to help you with that short window, and he'll at least get you those 9 to 10 victories. He's not a great fantasy quarter. The problem, I think, if 32 teams, he's number 15 or 17 quarterback in the league, right? You're right in the middle, Jason. But
maybe
you
lower.
could do so much worse, right? You could do so much worse as a franchise, and you obviously can you find better? Where the Buccaneers are in the draft, where they are in their salary cap right now, you're not going to find better. So you bring back Baker Mayfield. It looks like they're bringing back Mike Evans, right? And you go for one more year in that easier division. That the NFC South can be won.
Yeah, I mean, I that's what I think they should do. That's what I hope they'll do on the contract situation. The Mike Evans contract came out. It's actually really backloaded. They could do the same if they figure out a contract with Antoine Winfield instead of the franchise tag, and that's going to clear up the money for Baker Mayfield. They're going to figure it out. He's going to test the market. He's going to find out that no one wants to pay him as much as the Buccaneers would, and he's going to think about it and be like, I might as well stay on the same team. I've already been let go by 3 other teams. This team seems interested in me. I'm playing well. I just made the playoffs. I just won a playoff game and almost beat the Lions. So I think that there's not much of a better opportunity for him or that team. We'll move on. Justin Fields. What are you thinking about him?
I'm all in on Justin Fields still.
Yes.
I've seen it's not great. I get we have a nice sample size, 30. I think he's played 37 games, 38 games. Something if my memory says that. I have seen enough that there's still promise with him. And when I look at Justin Fields, they've had turnover on offense. He's never really played with a great personnel package around him. I mean, DJ Moore has been by far the best wide receiver, and he was great last year. But he doesn't have depth at the wide receiver position the first couple years. Cole Kmet is a nice tight end, but he's not a difference-making star. Their running backs have been, okay? Right. I still believe that with some consistent coaching, a better offensive mind, that Justin Fields can be a productive NFL quarterback. He needs to go to an offensive-minded coach. I mean, that you watch the Bears offense, and I know Justin Fields has some shortcomings. He holds on the ball too long, but it's a combination of the coaching staff not designing plays to get the ball out of his hands, as well as his inclination to hold on to it for so long. So we have 2 challenges here, right? I think with the more sophisticated offensive coaching staff, with some more playmakers, I still believe Justin Fields can be a good quarterback, and more importantly, a good fantasy quarterback for us. So I still believe in him.
I'm with you 100%. He's one of my biggest buys this offseason. And I've been even bringing it over into the real life field. I did an episode a couple weeks ago on football card values, just because, it was like right in that week between the Super Bowl and, or the AFC Championship and the Super Bowl. So there's just nothing going on. I was like, you know what? I'm going to compare fantasy football rankings to football card values. And Justin Fields, like, rookie cards are like the same price as like a Derek Carr rookie card. And it's like, like, this guy is going to be special. I think he's going to the Atlanta Falcons. I hope he's going to the Atlanta Falcons.
I am so hopeful that he goes to the Atlanta Falcons, man. He's never had that much talent around him, ever. That's crazy. Like Bijan Robinson and Justin Fields in the RPO game, that could be nasty, my friend.
I know. And so I need it to happen. I'm going to keep wishing for it. I actually I think it was September 23rd. I have a quote on the Player Profiler Twitter saying he's going to be a Falcon. So I can't get fantasy receipted. I have to be right. And I really hope it happens. We'll move on now to the guy that may make that not happen. And that's Kirk Cousins. Is he back in Minnesota? And would you be worried about the Achilles?
I'm not that worried about the Achilles because he doesn't make a living with his legs. I mean, you're going to find out how old I am. Dan Marino in early 92 snapped his Achilles. He came back in 93, had one of his great seasons.
Okay.
Vinny Testaverde snapped his Achilles with the New York Jets in 98, I think it was, if my old man memory serves me. Came back and played for the Jets. He might not be, he might be limited. He'll have the big boot on, probably, but the surgeries are, I would say, clearly better now than they were 30 years ago. But he still might have some type of boot cast on his foot. But that's not how he made a living. So I'm okay. I'm not worried about the injury. I'm more, where is he going to land? Now, I do believe that Minnesota is the better spot for him, but this is probably his last big contract. So he might be going for the money. Like, he's what, 36, is it? Do I have the right? I think he's about 36. I could be wrong. He came out with RG3, and that seems like forever ago now. So if you're looking at your last contract, it might be simply a matter of money. But I do think with Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, cross our fingers he comes back. I think that's the best offense for him.
Yeah, and 35 and a half. Just looked
35,
so
okay.
Basically right on the nose. He'll be 36 when the season starts. And I mean, that is definitely something to consider. I mean, he shops at Kohl's and all of that, and so I hope he's not totally chasing the bag. I really want him back in Minnesota, and I think that Minnesota wants him back, and I think ultimately Kirk Cousins does want to be in Minnesota. He's established great relationships with that locker room and that city. I mean, literally the week after tearing his Achilles, he was out at the Thanksgiving stuff, handing out turkeys to the community. So I mean, I know that those are small things, but they do mean something at the end of the day. Yes. And I think everything aligns for Minnesota to make the most sense. Could something wild happen? Sure. But I guess the deadline on this, I believe I read a couple days ago that they'll have to incur $28 million in dead cap if they don't extend him by the 13th when the new league year starts or whatever. So that the clock is definitely ticking.
Yes, and the 28 is hard for a team like Minnesota, I would think, to incur that much of a dead cap, but I haven't looked in detail enough to see if they could have. But that's a lot for a quarterback to lose, and they don't have any plans that I can tell to replace him.
Right, exactly. So we'll see. We'll see. Yesterday's episode, we talked one of the rumors they're looking at Trey Lance, but I really hope that that's just a smokescreen because that's just ridiculous.
I do. I agree. That's ridiculous.
So we'll move on to some actual news now. And we'll start with the biggest story, which is hilarious that it's the biggest story. Jonnu Smith is signing a 2-year, $10 million contract with the Miami Football Dolphins. How do you feel?
I think it's an NFL move more than a fantasy per se move.
Okay.
I think Jonnu Smith is a good NFL tight end. He can help your team in a lot of ways. Miami may be wanting to play a little bit more 12 personnel, kind of change it up a little bit on the offense. You have blocking tight ends there, not necessarily great. I think Jonnu helps you in the run game. He helps you in the passing game. That's why Jonnu was so too active, right? For all of us Kyle Pitts fans, we're like, why is Jonnu Smith getting so much action? But Arthur Smith wanted a more diverse, a more classic tight end, even if he wasn't he's clearly not as explosive and athletic as Kyle Pitts. But I think he helps the Miami Dolphins in NFL ways. And I think he could be a real nasty, inside the red zone when you put like Tyreek Hill and Devin A-Chain and you just sneak Jonnu Smith out. Like, who's covering Jonnu Smith in that type of formation, right? He's the last guy you're thinking about. So I do think it helps him from an NFL standpoint. It also tells me Miami didn't want to go out and spend a draft pick on a tight end. So sometimes they're signaling what they want to do. So they're looking at the tight ends in the draft and they're saying, look, we don't want a 4th round tight end. Let's just bring someone in here who we can know from the first day of training camp can get on the field and help our offense. So I think that's what Miami's signaling to you. We're not looking for a star at the tight end. We're not looking for an 800-yard receiver with double-digit touchdowns. We want someone who helps our offense.
I think that's a great way to look at it, and I think that that's the most reasonable viewpoint as well. Jonnu Smith, of course, has the athleticism, and we just saw a great year from him. But historically, the Dolphins haven't used the tight end. And even if they really do start to use the tight end, you can't imagine much volume coming away from Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, even Devon Achane in the pass game, Raheem Mostert in the pass game. He might get 4 or 5 targets, right? That's plenty on this offense.
Yes.
But you're not really going to see many 20-point, especially no 30-pointers. And you're probably never going to want to actually start him. You'll probably be a little upset if you have to. But we could be wrong. We'll move on to another tight end that, I never really thought we'd have to talk too much more about. And that is Darren Waller. I don't see my thing for it. I know I made one, but I guess I didn't. There is no board for it. We'll talk about Darren Waller. And I just think it's funny. We don't have to spend much time here, but he's coming out saying, I will decide if I'm retiring soon. And I don't know why you even have to signal it.
I actually thought he retired. I mean, that's a joke. But he seems to have retired on the football field. And if you look at Darren Waller's arc, and we know he was drafted by the Raiders, and it took him a while to get on the field, and there was personal things, you can look it up. I don't want to go into all that, and I was impressed. He made something out of essentially nothing to being a legitimate star fantasy tight end. But I think sometimes as fantasy fans, we take one-year wonders or maybe outlier seasons, and so many people just keep drafting basing on this ceiling that clearly has become an outlier. He's never going to be the tight end on the Raiders. I have not had Darren Waller in any fantasy league like the last 4 years. He can't stay on the field. I don't think he's as athletic as he used to be. I think injuries have caught up with him. He went to the Giants, which I'm sorry. I know they needed receivers, but I wasn't in love with the Giants passing game. Like, I kept seeing people year after year drafting him in the 4th and 5th round, and I'm like, why?
Yeah.
We chase these one-year wonders so much. I mean, everyone has value. If I'm looking at the 13th round and Darren Waller's, and I know he's going to sign, right? He's definitely going to play. Maybe I take Darren Waller for the 3 games a year in best ball. But I'm not going into a redraft league and hoping Darren Waller's my starting tight end anymore. Like, what are we doing here, folks, right? Like, I think it was before COVID, his great season. What is it like?
It was a long time ago.
It was so long. I'm done with him. But there will be people this summer who tell you that Darren Waller's a bargain in round 6. I'll be like, I'll see you. I'll get someone else.
Yeah, it was insane how high people were drafting Darren Waller. I know it didn't really mean much, but he was going before like Kyle Pitts, which I just felt was ridiculous. I know like Kyle Pitts didn't have a great season, but still, like that is just not process. That's not how you should look into things. Especially new team, injury history, age, bad quarterback. I really never saw what was so exciting about Darren Waller. And to pat myself on the back, he was my bust of the year candidate in last year's Wake and Take preseason award episode. So we'll move on to another bust, Russell Wilson. And this situation is getting worse and worse by the day. And, these are all rumors. We don't necessarily know how much of this is fact, but James Palmer from the NFL Network has come out today and said, or yesterday, I spoke to multiple teams that need a quarterback today, and all of them told me that right now, Russell Wilson is not an option that they are looking at.
I agree. I agree. Now, if you look over my shoulder, I have a 1960s AFL Denver Broncos helmet. Okay. I've been a Denver Bronco fan since 1977. I've probably seen 80% of Bronco games since 1988. He's not an NFL quarterback right now. He's lost it. I saw every game of the last 2 years with Russell Wilson. we now have a 3-year window where if you really are looking at Russell Wilson and take off your rose-colored glasses, stop. This is not Russell Wilson of 2017, 2018. This is not the Russell Wilson of back-to-back Super Bowls. My friends, he can't play in a timing offense. He loves these big rainbow bombs when he had DK Metcalf, Doug Baldwin, Tyler Lockett. And that was terrible. He did not fit Sean Payton's offense. Sean Payton wants a quick processor. He wants someone who gets the ball out of his hands, and he wants someone who can throw a dart within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. Russell can't do that. He wants to run around. He wants to use his athleticism. But Jason, guess what? At 33, his athleticism is gone. And the linebackers are too fast. The safeties are too fast. His arm strength, and he didn't have DK Metcalf and Doug Baldwin. I mean, how many times have we seen him back in the old, when he was a star? We saw him literally throw up, run around for 2 or 3 seconds like Fran Tarkenton. I'm real old. Run around, avoid some pass rushers, and then find one of his all-pro receivers 40 yards down the field.
Oh, it was special.
That was special. But that game, most offensive coordinators don't want to play that game anymore. And I'm telling you, he took way too many sacks, Jason. And he held on to the ball way too much. I believe he's going to end up like in a Vinny Testaverde situation. He probably needs to be humbled as far as his ego, not get signed, sit around, and then a team is dead because we know injuries are going to occur, right? We know they're going to devastate the quarterback position. Maybe by October, there's a team who desperately needs a quarterback. And maybe they reach out and they have to pay him the bare minimum, right? Because Denver's on the hook for all the other money. And they'll call up Russell Wilson and say, will you come and play? We need a quarterback. I think that might be his best option right now, my friend.
Yeah, I've got one idea that I'll throw at you in just a second. But I've just got to say to the audience and you, it is a screaming indictment when the Steelers are coming out and virtually showing us that they would rather have Kenny Pickett or Mason Rudolph over not just Russell Wilson, veteran minimum Russell Wilson.
That's the thing. He's dirt minimum. You don't have to pay him nothing. And they're like, nah, we don't want that.
No.
I mean, that's crazy.
It really, really says something when you add just the monetary thing to it. Like, you do not have to pay him probably for the next 2 seasons. And no one wants him. However, I just thought of this, literally just thought of it. If the Buccaneers can't get Baker Mayfield, I think Russell Wilson is their next best shot because I think he could probably connect with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. I think Rachaad White would hopefully help him a bit. So I think that's an okay landing spot if they can't get Baker Mayfield, but I think at this point they're getting Baker. But just thought of that. Good thinking, I think.
No, I don't like Atlanta for him because I think they need a timing offense and they have a pass-catching running back. But I do think Atlanta, that would be if they can't get Baker, it's not a bad fallback option.
Yeah, especially since they're kind of working with a cap situation right now too. So anyway, that's the Russell Wilson discussion. Great talk on him. Really, really great insight and passion about how bad Russell Wilson is. I love it. We'll move on to another quarterback and team really that had a down year. And it's interesting, and I think that I would like to hear your thoughts on this. And this is the Jaguars. They just signed guard Ezra Cleveland to another contract, 3 years, $28.5 million. Really, really great signing. Not that much money either when you talk about how good he's been for the team. So I really just we don't have to go into offensive line talk, right? But just talk about your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence, maybe last season going forward, and maybe sprinkle in Jaguars offense, Calvin Ridley in as well.
I love the signing. I'm a big proponent. I might be too old school. I build from the offensive line, and then I find my skill position. And the Jaguars, I was looking at their depth chart. It looks like if all 5 guys are healthy, they would be bringing back the same starting offensive lineman they ended up the season with. So I like that continuity on my offensive line. Of course, injuries can happen. I understand that. But Ezra Johnson, that is a very fair value for a good starting guard in the NFL. So I think this is a good move. I think it helps Trevor Lawrence. The one thing, if I have a quarterback it may just call me crazy, I got to protect him. And I think this line should be able to protect them better. And I'll tell you this, I don't know if the Jaguars are going to re-sign him, but if I was Jacksonville, I would re-sign Calvin Ridley. I can't risk trying to find – you might get the receiver. I get it. But you might miss too. Mm-hmm. And I know what I have with Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley, and you got Evan Ingram. Then let me find a 3 wide receiver. Last year the Bucs got Trey Palmer. Maybe I can find that type of young player who I might be able to help me down the road. Give me back Calvin Ridley if I'm the Jaguars.
Yeah, I know. They have to give up a 2nd-round pick, I believe, if they bring him back. But I want to say it's a 3rd if they don't. So it's probably worth it just to do the 2nd and keep him. You don't want Trevor Lawrence trying to learn with another wide receiver again.
I don't think so.
Yeah, and this wide receiver class, we talked about Ricky Pearsall, but I mean, there's a Ricky Pearsall light even at the end of the draft in Luke McCaffrey, who could be a very, very fun signing to kind of maybe work on a bit. You could probably get Jerry Rice's son in the 3rd or 4th round.
So. Yes.
Yeah, so I do like that move, and I really do hope the Jaguars offense figures it out. Last year it was really weird, and I don't know if it was expectations and they had a big head or what. Definitely a down year for them, but Trevor Lawrence, I think it's going to turn it around. I still think he's probably a top 10 quarterback. Travis Etienne going into yet another year healthy, so I think we could get excited about this offense. Hopefully,
and it's I will say it looks like it's coming at a much better discount than last year in fantasy football.
100%.
Last year they were hot, so it cost you a lot. This year, I think you're going to get a discount on the offense.
Yeah, no, 100%. And literally, especially if they bring back Calvin Ridley, nothing's changed. So why not? Nothing. In fact, it's probably only got more good. I know that's not good English. Because they're going to have now shootouts with the Colts. Shootouts with the Texans. That was something that was not expected going into last season. So, get your Jaguars. Find some value there. So that is all the news, all the trending topics, which means we've made it to my favorite part of the show. This is when you have the chance to give me your hot take for next season.
This is going to be related to a topic we talked about earlier. Kirk Cousins signs with the New England Patriots. New England drafts Marvin Harrison with the 3rd pick overall, and New England wins the AFC East.
Wow.
If you're Robert Kraft, can you wait a long time to get back to the playoffs?
No.
If you are Jared Mayo, don't you want to win right away?
Yeah.
So what do? You can't risk it with the rookie quarterback. Plus, you have a guy named Marvin Harrison who could be super special. But you can't bring Marvin Harrison in with those quarterbacks they have on the roster right now. And I looked it up. New England has the 2nd most cap space available right now. You can unload the truck for Kirk Cousins and give him $20 million a year for the next 2 or 3 years.
No, I like that a lot. They did say they want to make a splash in free agency. That would certainly be a splash, and it would mean that Kirk Cousins is not going to Atlanta and killing my Justin Fields dreams. So I like it.
Then he goes to Atlanta Field.
I like it a lot. I think that also with the Patriots, I think Russell Wilson could be a quarterback they explore too, now that I'm talking about bottom of the barrel. But anyway. They wouldn't do that, right? They want to win. They want to do better. I like the Marvin Harrison Jr. call, especially, I mean, Robert Kraft, especially in kind of the prime of his career, was watching Marvin Harrison tear up his Patriots. So I'm sure he wants the sun. I think he wants the sun. So
and what has New England been missing for the last 5 years?
I don't know. Maybe a wide receiver that Bill Belichick
Maybe a wide receiver. And then you get Ramondre Stevenson back, and their defense isn't awful. I think that's a sneaky splash.
I like that a lot. I think that's a real fun one. So look out for that, guys, especially as we talked about, March 13th is ticking. And if the Vikings have to take that dead cat, we could be seeing something interesting forming. So that is the show. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. John, thank you for joining me. Please tell the audience about what you're working on, where they can find you.
Right now, all of my player profiles, the scouting reports, and the prospect resume, and all of my models are available on playerprofiler.com right now. You can go search my name or search Gridiron Scholar, and you'll be able to see right now. I just uploaded the top 12 running backs, so you can see my top 12 running backs, and there's a link. I have 31 running backs ranked in my model, so you can see who I like there. Wide receivers and quarterbacks are up right now, and I'm going to be finishing my tight ends very soon. And you go future cast, me, Maddie, Theo, and Alex. We just did a 3-round rookie mock draft that is on Future Cast on Player Profiler on YouTube. So you can check out who the movers and shakers are after the combine, because we recorded it the other night after the combine results are in.
Nice. Definitely go check that out and check out all of John's work. He's doing really, really great stuff for us and everywhere. So follow him on Twitter, read his articles. It's excellent insight, and look out for more John all across Player Profiler all summer long. It's going to be awesome. Thanks again for joining me. This was a ton of fun. And everyone, you have a fantastic Friday, a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern on the Player Profiler YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Peace.
From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.